All right. So what we're looking at today is we are looking at we are looking at the subject of how we number our days, and the reason why we're here is given the season that we're in the fall feast and Muadim of Yahuah, and I said feast individually, singularly, because contrary to what we always hear, you'll hear people often speak of the fall feast, as in several, but um, there is actually one fall feast. That is the Feast of Tabernacles. Everything else that occurs associated with it um, is actually they're actually muadim, and so we know that every feast is a muad, or all feasts are muadim, but not all muadim are feast. Okay, so the question is, how do we even know how to count to the feast? And of course, that begins with the beginning of the year. That's where our count must begin. We must begin with the start of the year. But right there is much confusion. Where do we start? And if you're wrong on the start, you're certainly going to be wrong on everything in the middle and wrong on everything in the end. Now, these are called appointed times of Yahuah. That's what Muad is, or Muadim, the appointed times of Yahuah. And so, what we know about the word appointed is the word appointed is very much related to the word appointment, and every appointment has a required or a specific time. So, if you miss the appointment, then there's no need showing up. You're going to have to reschedule if you can. You see, in this case, we'll have to reschedule for the next season, the next feast. Another thing is too that there is really no controversy, but there is about whether or not we can, whether or not we are actually keeping the feast of Yahuwah outside of Yerushalayim, in the lands of our captivity. And there are several reasons for this uh, controversy or confusion. You see, a lot of people thinks that we are no longer in captivity. We are no longer in bondage. You see, Christianity teaches that you accept Jesus in your heart and Jesus sets you free. Well, we have people also who use the name Yahuah, Yahusha, who also proclaim the same thing. You accept Yahusha and Yahusha sets us free, so we are no longer a people in captivity. We are no longer a people in bondage. However, that's not true, family. We are still a people. We are still a nation in captivity. We are still a people who are in a scattered state. We are scattered in foreign lands. You see, we have been put out of the land. We are scattered. And so we are still very much a people who is affected by um, the constructs of captivity, of being in captivity. So we are not free. Spiritually, in this prison, we are free. Spiritually, physically, we are in prison. Spiritually, we are free. Um, but we still experience the tumult of physical captivity. And according to the scriptures, One cannot, must not, should not keep the feasts of Yahuah, and there are not 7 or 8 or 9, but there is only actually 3. One cannot, must not, should not keep the feast of Yahuah in foreign land, in a foreign land, okay? I want to take a second. I think, let me see if I recall this correctly. Let me just go to, I think where I want to go is Bamadabar, or the book of Numbers, chapter 9. I just want to look at this here very quickly. Bamadabar, or the book of Numbers, chapter 9. You see, there are instructions that come along with every feast, including the Shabbat. The Shabbat is a feast. The Shabbat is a weekly feast. So we have 3 annual feasts. We have 1 weekly feast. But there are instructions that comes along with each feast. And those instructions should be followed um, as written. Last week we read from the scriptures concerning what Yahuah has to say about adding to his instructions and taking away from his instructions. Those instructions must be followed. I want to go ahead and read from the book of Bamadabar, or Numbers, chapter 9 here, very briefly, if I would. Okay. Oh yes, yes, to the yes, there it is. I could. Let me get back to it. I'm going to be sharing my screen. Book of Bamadabar, or Numbers. Can everybody read what's on the screen? Let me just double check. Okay, praise Yah. All right. All right, so let me go back. So the book of Bamadabar. So there are several places in the scriptures where Yahuah makes it known that his feast cannot, should not, cannot and should not be observed. And I will emphasize again. Give me a second. Um, so there are several places in the scriptures where Yahuah emphasized that his feast cannot and should not be, cannot and should not be kept in foreign lands. Okay, there are several places in the scriptures. We're going to look at one of them here as we prepare to go into the issue of timekeeping. So I just want to talk about this very briefly, and then we're going to transition to the issue of timekeeping. Okay, so Bamadabar, or the book of Numbers, chapter 9. All right, Bamadabar, or Numbers, chapter 9, beginning at verse 1. And Yahuah spoke to Masha in the wilderness of Sinai in the first moon of the second year. First moon, first month, okay, of the second year after they had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, saying, Now let the children of Yasharal perform the Passover at its appointed time. So the Passover is to be performed at its appointed time. On the 14th day of this moon, between the evenings. Now, I want to point out something here. I'm not going into all of this right now, but also people say they're keeping Passover and they begin their observation of Passover at the beginning of the 14th day. That goes contrary to the scriptures. This phrase that you see here, between the evening, is very important. And not every translation translate it this way. Some translation actually uses the word twilight, which is actually a better, more clearer, more concise translation. But this confuses a lot of people. So to observe Passover, if we were able to observe the remembrance, because that is what we would be observing if we could, the remembrance of Passover. The remembrance of Passover and the initial or original Passover are two different things. The original Passover was a one-day feast. The remembrance of Passover, or the Feast of Unleavened Bread, is a one-day feast named Passover that was changed into a 7-day remembrance called the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Okay? So, Feast of Unleavened Bread for the people of Yasharal a 7-day feast came to replace a 1-day feast. A 7-day remembrance feast came to replace a 1-day event. A 7-day remembrance feast came to replace a 1-day event. There were only 2 times where you had the event of Passover. There were only 2 times where in the scriptures we have the event of Passover. Those 2 times were, number one, as the people were getting ready to come out of Mitzrayim, you had the event of Passover, a 1-day feast that pointed to the 1-day feast, Yahusha. Okay, so Yahusha would come, he would become the Passover lamb, didn't replace the sacrifice, as some people teach, but he became our Passover lamb, and he kept the Passover, a 1-day feast. So Masha kept the Passover, a 1-day feast, and then Yahusha came along and fulfilled the thing that pointed to him. We are then commanded to do the remembrance, to keep the remembrance. Okay, just as when the people came out of Mitzrayim, they were commanded to keep the remembrance. Not to keep the Passover, but to keep the remembrance. So that is very important, very, very important, and very necessary for us to understand, right? Okay. So verse 3, on the 14th day of this moon between the evenings, perform it as it's at its appointed time, according to all its laws and right rulings you perform it. So on the 14th day between the evenings, or on the 14th day at twilight, so as the 14th day is ending, you begin the remembrance. Yahuah goes on to tell us throughout the scriptures that you do it at the same time, in the same day that you came out of Mitzrayim. Now you ask the scriptures, what day did they come out of Mitzrayim? And the scriptures tells us that they came out of Mitzrayim on the, what day did they come out of Mitzrayim, dear family? According to the scripture, what day did they come out? The 15th day to the Aki. They came out, according to the scriptures, they came out of Mitzrayim on the 15th day. And so we are to begin the remembrance. How fitting. We are to begin the remembrance on the same day that you came out of Mitzrayim. That is very fitting, isn't it? That you are beginning the remembrance on the same day of the thing that you're trying to remember. On the same day of the thing that you were commanded to remember. So you can't forget, can you? So why are we doing this again? To remember our deliverance. That on the 15th day of the moon, Yahuah brought us out of Mitzrayim. Okay, so this is all laid out for us in the scriptures. However, there is much confusion concerning this. Much confusion and much wrong teaching concerning this, stemming from Judaism. Okay, now let's go back here. All right, now, so verse 4. Wait, let me go back to verse 3. So on the 14th day of this moon between the evenings, or on the 14th day at twilight, perform it as at its appointed time. We have a whole bunch of people say they're celebrating the Passover, keeping the Passover, doing the Passover at its appointed time, but we have a lot of different dates. And that's a problem. If it's an appointed time, there's got to be only one date. According to, and people beginning to observe it at the beginning of the 14th day instead of the beginning of the 15th day, so on and so forth. Now notice, this is a very important phrase here also. Yahuah says, so you are to keep it at its appointed time, according to all its laws and right rulings, you are to perform it. According to all its laws and right rulings, you are to perform it. According to all its laws and right rulings, you are to perform it. That's something very important for us not to miss. So when you keep the Passover, the remembrance of Passover, you must keep it according to all its laws and right rulings. That's the way you are to perform it. The problem is many people call themselves keeping Passover, but they have never read all its laws. Let me highlight that. I won't let me. Come on, I don't want to. All right. I want to highlight all its laws, but it won't let me. Many people call themselves keeping the feast, but they have never read all its laws. Okay, many people call themselves keeping the feast and say that they're keeping the feast, and as a result, they are more set apart than anybody who is not keeping the feast. But they have never read all its laws, and certainly is not doing according to all its laws or all its instructions, all its Torah. Okay, so that's the problem. But we are to do it according to all its laws and right rulings. That's the way you are to perform it. Now, verse 4. And Masha spoke to the children of Yasharal to perform the Passover. So they performed the Passover on the 14th day of the first moon between the evenings, the 14th day at twilight, in the wilderness of Sinai, according to all that Yahuah commanded Masha, so the children of Yasharal did. According to all that Yahuah commanded Masha, so the children of Yasharal did. According to all Yahuah commanded Masha, so the children of Yasharal did. But there were men who were defiled for a being of a man, so that they were not able to perform the Passover on that day. So they came before Masha and Harun that day, and those men said to him, We are defiled for the being of a man. Why are we withheld from bringing near the offering of Yahuah at its appointed time among the children of Yasharal? So they were defiled because they had to handle a dead body, and they were prohibited from keeping the feast at its appointed time. Now they felt slighted because they were just doing their service. They had to take care of this body, that this man that had died, but that prohibited them from keeping the feast. And so they went to Masha. They wanted to know, so listen now, we it's not like we did anything else. We were just doing our duty, but we are prohibited from keeping the feast. What can we do? What must we do? Verse 8, and Masha said to them, Wait, let me hear what Yahuah commands concerning you. Hallelujah. Wait, let me hear what Yahuah commands concerning you. I'm not going to try to figure this out myself. I'm not going to try to tell you what I think you should do. Wait, let me hear what Yahuah commands for you to do. Verse 9, and Yahuah spoke to Masha, saying, Speak to the children of Yasharal, saying, When any male of you or your generations is unclean for a being, for a dead person, or is far away on a journey. Oh, wait. Speak to the children of Yasharal, saying, When any male of you or your generations is unclean for a dead person as a result of handling a body, or is far away on a journey, he shall still perform the Passover of Yahuah. Oh, wait. So you mean we can, we're far away on a journey, right, family? Right? Are we far away on a journey? Right. We're far away on a journey, right? We are far away. We're not in the land. We are far away. As a matter of fact, we are so far away, we're scattered all around the globe. We are far away, right? But the scripture says here that when any of you is far away on a journey, he shall still perform the Passover of Yahuah. Huh. Do we stop there? Do we stop there, family? Do we stop there? Should we stop there? No. No, not at all. I know a whole lot of people that stops there, though. I know a whole lot of people that stops there. Okay, let's go on, because context is important. Let's continue. Context is important. All right. Now let's see. So he says, you shall still perform the Passover if you're on a journey or is far away on a journey. So if, wait. Okay, let's reflect back again a little bit. Speak to the children of Yasharal, saying, when any male of you or your generations is unclean for a dead body, as a result of a dead body, or is far away, you must still perform the Passover. So let's try to get some clarity here. So you mean then that Yahuah is saying that the person who is defiled by a dead body, so these men should not have been prohibited from keeping the Passover, they're unclean. Is Yahuah saying that they should not have been prohibited? Is that what is being stated here? No, not at all, right? So obviously something is coming, right? Because Yahuah is already gave the instruction that if a person is defiled by a dead body, they cannot keep the feast. If you are traveling, he already gave the declaration that if you are traveling on a journey far away, if you are away from your homeland, you cannot keep the feast in a foreign land. So he's clearly not going back on his word saying, no, 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 they can keep it unclean and they can keep it in foreign lands. No, he's not. So let's continue from there. All right. Now, he says, watch this now, verse 11. On the 14th day of the second moon, on the 14th day of the second moon, between the evenings, they perform it. With unleavened bread and bitter herbs, they eat it. On the 14th day of when, family? On the 14th day of the first moon? Right. No, not the first. The second. Why the second? Why the second? So they're defiled. By the time the first moon came around, the original Passover time, that time came around, they were either on a journey far away or they were defiled by some means. They were unclean. Yahuwah said, okay, you're unclean, you can't keep it now, but on the 14th day of the second. Why? Why on the 14th day of the second? Why do you think, family, he said on the 14th day now of the second moon? Right, absolutely a key. It gives them time to be cleansed, and plus if they're traveling to get back to the land. It gives them time to be cleansed, and if they're traveling to get back to the land. So you see what we're waiting on, family. We're waiting on the 14th day of the second moon. We are on a journey far away. We're in a foreign land. We're waiting for our second opportunity to celebrate the feast of Yahuwah. When we are regathered, we will celebrate the feast in the place that Yahuwah has chosen for his name to dwell, where he commands that there you are to keep the feast unto Yahuwah. So Yahuwah says that if you are traveling far away, or if you are unclean, then you come on the 14th day of the second moon. If you're traveling somewhere, then you have an entire moon now to get back. Okay? You have an entire moon to get back. And then once you get back, then on the 14th day of the second moon. Now we study the scriptures, we find in the book of Chronicles, for example, and we find in different places where the people would come together when for one reason or another they were unable to keep the feast on the first the twilight of the 14th day of the first moon. They would come and they would keep it on the twilight of the 14th day of the second moon. Why? Because they were either on a journey. In some cases we find that they were on a journey away from Yahuwah, and so the king Yahusha had to call them back to Yahuwah, and by the time he did that, it was too late to keep the Passover in the first moon, so they kept it in the second moon. The book of Chronicles, chapter 30 through 34, right? And in other places in the scriptures. So the scriptures clearly shows us that, and now this is just one little part of the puzzle, and it's really not a puzzle, but this is just one little part of it. Yahuwah says that he lays out his word, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, and then he explains to the prophet Yashayahu why he lays it out that way. He explained to the prophet, aka Isaiah, why he laid it out that way. He says, I lay it out that way so that the wicked, or in other words, the lazy, would stumble and fall over backwards. You see, lazy people don't want to dig through the scriptures. Lazy people don't want to study line upon line, precept upon precept. Lazy people come to the first verse and make a doctrine out of it. Yahuwah says, no, that's dangerous. Don't do that. You will end up adding and taking away from my word. But I lay out my word in such a way so that the lazy, the wicked, they will stumble over it and they will fall over backwards. Question on the board? What if the journey takes longer than 2 days journey? Well, not 2 days, but actually 2 moon. One. He gave them a whole month to get back to Jerusalem. Yeah, so they had a whole month. They had 29 and a half days, 30 days, whatever, to get back. So if they miss, right. So if they miss the first month, then you have a whole month to get back. He gave them an entire month to get back. So the second moon, right? Okay, so that was more than enough time. Now we can, in our captivity, in our captivity, our moon is long. You see, we're in a long captivity, and so we're waiting for that long second moon. Okay, we have a long walk. All right, but Yahuwah is patient. He's waiting on us. He's patient, getting us together. Okay, now, so we go back over here now. All right, so on the 14th day of the second month or second moon, between the evenings, they perform it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They eat it. Now, that is not all there is to the Passover. That's not all there is. People read this and say, oh, yeah, that's it. All I got to go now is go run to shop, right? I'll get me a leg of lamb and I'll get me some bitter herbs and I'll get me some deviled eggs and I'll get me some whatever, and some salt water and some this and that. And man, come on over. I'm going to get me 10 bottles of wine and we're going to have a good time. My friend, you ain't had nothing. You ain't had no Passover. You just have a slumber fest or a drunk fest, but it was not Passover. You see? So he says, now, they do not leave of it until morning, and so on. So I want to stop there anyway. But the reason why I came here is to show that the scriptures clearly shows us. Now, this is not the only place I could go. There are many other scriptures that we can go to. But I came here to show that Yahuwah makes it clear that his feast, we cannot keep his feast because of the requirements that go with them. We cannot keep his feasts in foreign lands. Okay? We can commemorate them. We assemble at their times and we reflect and look forward to when we can keep them in our captivity. That's why I love to reflect on the book of Tahalim, Psalms 137. And I heard a speech by Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was a little bit twisted in his belief, but he knew who he was, and he did get this part of it. Frederick Douglass, in his speech about what is the 4th of July to the American slave, the part of his speech that they always omit, that they never quote, is where Frederick Douglass, in his speech, quoted from Psalms 137. And he says, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, knowing who he is. And we remember Zion. While the wicked carry us away into captivity, they required of us a song. But how can we sing Yahuwah's song in a strange land? We bow our heads, we hang our harps. And it goes on to say, lest we forget you, O Yerushalayim, may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. The people were not celebrating in their captivity. A people who knew what they have been stripped from, what has been stripped from them, what they have given up and what they have lost, is grieved now that it's gone and long to go home. The problem is, we, just like our ancestors that were born in Matzrayim, had never seen freedom, and so we are eating the food that goes to swine, and we actually think that we are eating a gourmet meal. We think that, oh man, it don't get no better than this, when in reality, we have not even had a glimpse at the best that Yahuwah has for us, has in store for us. We, being born in this captivity, just like our ancestors in Matzrayim, did not even know the name of our Creator. Yahuwah had to call out his messenger, prepared him, and then say, go to my people and tell them I am sent me, because first they must know that I exist. Then what is his name? Yahuah is his name. Yahuah sent me. You see? And so Yahuwah had to reintroduce himself to them, just like he had to reintroduce himself to us. No, my name is not Amun Ra. My name is not Baal. My name is none of them. My name is Yahuwah. You see? I heard your groans, and I came to deliver you. And so he had to reintroduce himself to them through his servants. And that's where we are. So we are people born in captivity. And as a result, we're eating mess thinking that we are eating something wonderful. And that's the case with a whole lot of people. They're satisfied with swine food. But the prodigal son, had he not known where he came from, had he been born in the swine pen, somebody would have a tough time convincing him that this is not home, and this is not what home should be, and this is not what home looks like. But because he knew from whence he came, by the time he got to the point of eating with swines, he said, this ain't right. I got to go back home. The problem with us is we were born with the swine. We have been living with the swine. We have been eating with the swine, and we even see ourselves as swines. Somebody come and try to tell us, you ain't no swine. Get out of the swine pen. You're not a swine. And somehow they are the enemy. And it takes a mighty move of Yahuwah to show us differently. But he's doing it. Halal huyah. So for a people who are traveling, we cannot keep the feast. We are prohibited from keeping the feast in foreign lands. We are absolutely prohibited from keeping the feast in foreign lands. We are absolutely prohibited from keeping the feast in foreign lands. All right. Now, what I want to do at this time, so we can't keep the feast. And of course, there are many more scriptures I can go to, but I'm not going to go to them right now, family. Hopefully that one really helped. If there are any doubts, that one really helps us to see that, because I don't have enough time to go to all of them. But what I would like to speak to now is the issue of timekeeping. There are many doctrines associated with timekeeping. Many doctrines associated with timekeeping. What I'd like to do is I want to go to the scriptures and first then to figure out when does the year begin, because that's where it all begins. If we get that wrong, then we're going to get everything else wrong. So yes, we can keep the feast, but the appointed times are important, and we should assemble and we should reflect in as much as it is possible for us to do in this captivity. We should also keep in mind that we are a people in captivity, and not all the time we are going to be able to do as we would like to do, because we do not govern ourselves, we do not rule ourselves. And maybe simply because I might have some freedom this week or this month or this year, and somebody else don't have the freedom that I have this month, this week, or this year, does not mean that that person loves Yahuwah any less or desires to serve Yahuwah any less than I do, because they don't have the freedom that I have this month, this week, or this year. So you don't have to work on Shabbat. You don't have to work when these appointed times come around. And somehow, because I'm in that position, which I'm not, but let's use me, because I'm in that position, then I'm more set apart than John, who has to. No. I'm sure you've had your turn in this captivity. We have all had our turns in this captivity. The difference is maybe at the time, while I was in that situation, I was blinded to the fact that I needed to observe Yahuwah's Shabbat. And it is meaningful for me to assemble and reflect at the appointed times, but I was blinded to the appointed times. I was blinded to the reality of Yahuah Shabbat and so on. And so I was busy either partying on the seventh day, running around shopping, trying to get some clothes so I can go out that night, or still sleeping from sixth day evening or beginning of seventh day evening after I went out and partied all night or something. I didn't have to work, but I was busy doing my own thing. I wasn't concerned with Shabbat. Now it comes that I gain some knowledge of these times, and I don't have to work, or I don't have to do any of these. Somebody else might have to, just that I don't have to. And it doesn't mean that that person don't necessarily want to. Still, in as much as possible, esteem these times of Yahuah. It's just that the circumstances in captivity and the rulership of the captor do not always give us the freedoms that we desire. I know that I've made a lot of enemies saying this, but I will say it, and I will say it as long as Yahuah calls me to breathe and speak. I will say it. It's unpopular. It goes contrary to what the name brand teachers teach, but I will say it as unpopular as it is, and as much as it ostracizes me and cause people to call me whatever and walk away and leave or whatever. I will say it because it's the truth. Because it is the truth. I will say it. Truth is not popular. Truth is not popular. Truth is very unpopular. A whole lot of people really don't look for truth. They look for emotional excitation. You see? They look for feel-good events and feel-good circumstances and people to make them feel good. They look for crowd. They don't look for truth. Not interested in the crowd. Yes, not interested in the crowd. I'm interested in truth. And I don't care how many enemies it makes me, I'm going to stick with it. Now, so we want to look at how we number our days. The first thing I want to look at, I'm not going to dig into any writings or doctrines. I just want to talk about from the perspective of subject matter. One of the main things that really throw us off and mess us up, let me put it this way, first of all, Judaism really mess us up. Let me write that. Beware of Judaism. Judaism. Bob Marley say, he's sick and tired of the ism schism, that you die and go to heaven in a Jesus name. Well, I'm sick and tired of the ism schisms of Judaisms. Nothing but isms, you see. So Judaism is the main culprit that mess us up. We left the church and we look across the way and the grass looks nice and green, and they have a banner up that says Torah, Torah, and we say, yeah, there's some truth. I can follow that. And realize that the synagogue of Satan across the way is probably even more dangerous than the church you just left. More dangerous because it kind of looked like it could be true. It reflects the truth. It touts the truth. It tends to want to mirror the truth. And that's what makes it even more dangerous. And again, it's just Christianity in another skirt. You see, if Shaitan don't get you one way, he try to get you another way. He is very diverse. You see, he got a flavor for everybody. Now, so beware of Judaism. Judaism. Yahuah never gave us Judaism. Yahuah never gave us Judaism. Yahuah never gave us any isms. Yahuah gave us truth. You see. So beware of that. Now, you beware of Judaism and then beware of the doctrines that come with Judaism. Now, the doctrine that really have a lot of people confused and messed up is the doctrine of the barley harvest. The doctrine of the barley. 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 That have a whole lot of our people messed up. The doctrine of the barley. The doctrine of the barley. You know, for a lie that is such an outright lie, it grieves me that so many of our people fall for it. It is such an outright lie that it grieves me that so many of us fall for it. So many of our people. The doctrine of the barley. All right. Now, family, what is the word we find in Scripture that gave us the barley doctrine? The word didn't give it to us, but they used that word to give us the barley doctrine. The barley doctrine was built on one word used in Scripture. Abib. Absolutely. Tuda aki. Abib. And remember, recalling that there is no I in the table. So the correct spelling would be Abib, right? A-B-Y-B. Abib. 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 Let me ask this, family. Does the word Abib mean barley? Does the word Abib mean barley? No. 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 Long no there. No. The word Abib does not mean barley. The word Abib does not mean barley. How did Abib become synonymous with barley? And here's the thing. Thank you for posting that, Aki. The word Abib really, I'm writing all this out, has nothing to do directly with ripening. Okay? So the word Abib has nothing to do with barley, and the word Abib really has no direct relationship to ripening. That a surprise or no? So these are two things that yes, people certainly do post those things and say it all the time. You see, the ripening. And they're referring to the barley harvest doctrine. But the word Abib has nothing to do with ripening, and it has nothing to do directly with barley. Has nothing to do directly with barley and nothing to do directly with ripening. Okay? All right. Let's go to the uh let's go to the what they call it? Mm, uh, lexicon or whatever, right? Let's look up the word. I think I pulled it up already. Let's look at the word Abib. Um, let's look at the word Abib. Let's look at the word Abib. All right. So this is the word Abib. While we're here, we can expose some Yiddish fairy tales. So here they say Abib is Aviv, not the case, it's Abib. Okay. Oh no, it's only in Yiddish that a B makes a V sound. Um, but Abib, and it should be spelled A B. This is Aleph Beyat Yad Beyat. So A B Y B, Abib, Abib. Okay, that's Abib. Take away the Yiddish vowel points, you have Abib. Okay. Now, let's go down here a bit. Look at the definitions, and you can find this in many places. Okay. Abib. Wait, let me suggest something to you. The word Abib, a very direct translation. So if I want to say Abib in English, if I want to use one word in English for Abib, it would be spring. If I want to use one word in English for Abib, it would be spring. Spring. Okay? If I want to use one word in English for Abib, that one word would be spring. 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 Spring is named spring because of what, family? Why do they call the season spring? Why do they call it spring? Sprouting. Absolutely. Sprouting. 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 Things begins to spring up. Things begin to spring up. That's why it's called spring. Now, not a question. What causes things to spring up in the spring? What causes things to spring up in the spring? Absolutely. The sun. The position of the sun in relationship to the earth. The position of the sun in relation to the earth. The position of the sun in relation to the earth. So, if I can use this word, celestially, what happens in the winter with the sun and the earth? What brings us winter? Right. Well, yeah, solstice, but that wasn't the one I was looking for there, Aki. That's it. That's what I'm looking for. The sun is farther away. The sun is farther away. The sun is farther away. The earth is on an axis and it has a tilt, right? In the winter, the earth is tilted away from the sun. As spring comes around, as the earth rotates, it tilts, leans into the sun, and the earth gets warmer. The warmer the earth gets, the sun activates nutrients, chemicals in the soil that causes seeds and roots to grow, to spring up. In the winter time, as the earth drifts away from the sun, things in the soil goes through a process of hibernation. They begin to shut down. Beginning in the fall, the trees begin to prepare themselves. The leaves begin to fall off. The bark begin to change. The roots begin to gradually shut down to preserve themselves from frost and freeze and preserve the cells of the tree, right? And the tree goes into a sleep mode just like a bear would go into hibernation for the winter. And then as the earth warms up, as it leans into the sun awakens the nutrients, the chemicals, the things that Yahuah placed in the earth. It awakens it and brings life to the roots and to the seeds. And so things begin to spring up, right? So that's what's happening um, during the season, right? Sun is further south, absolutely, of the equator, absolutely. So that's what's happening. Now the sun does not move. So the only reason why it becomes north or south is because of the tilt of the earth, because the earth is on a 23.5 degree tilt, and it wobbles as it turns. And so as it rotates, as it moves, as it goes around the sun, it either tilts in or tilts away from the sun. And all of this has to do with the things that take place on the earth. Okay, all of it has to do with what we see taking place on the earth. Okay, now the thing is that, so we're looking then at Abib. So one word in English for Abib is spring. One word in English for Abib is spring. Now let's look at the definitions and see how the definitions communicate spring to us. Fresh or new, young barley ears, barley. So barley comes around in springtime. That's the season of barley. But Abib does not mean barley. It's only speaking about the fresh ears, young. You know what ears is? Blade. Okay, the blade of barley popping up. The blade, just like you have the blade from a seed or the blade from grass as it shoots out of the ground. That's what it's in reference to. It's not in reference to, as Judaism teaches us, ripened barley. It's not in reference to barley harvest. It's in reference to the springing up. And it's not just barley. It just happens that barley comes in that season, but it's not in reference to barley. Okay? Barley is one of the vegetations that come in that's its season. Okay? But it's not limited to barley. Okay? It's speaking about the springing up of that plant. Okay? Now it says month number 2, month of air forming. Month of air forming. Now that's where it springs up. In that month, that's where its things begin to spring up and the plant begin to take shape. Okay? Of greening of crop. Of greening of crop. So trees that was dormant during the winter begin to turn green. They begin to bud because it's spring. And life begin to come from what seemed like a dead tree. Of growing green Abib. Now here, we remember what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the Bible, and they're calling barley Abib. Barley is not Abib. Yes, Jesus loved me because the Bible tells me so. Yes, Abib is barley because the Bible tells me so. No, Abib is not barley, but yet the Bible tells me so. Okay, and so they're saying here that it can be used in reference to the growing barley. Again, notice, not harvest. So even if we want to say, call it barley, it's not in reference to harvest as the doctrine proclaims. All right. And then they also go on to tell you month of Exodus and Passover. Okay. They also tell you on the pagan calendar, it falls between March and April. Between March or April is what they tell you here. All right. We're going to get into some of this a little bit later on. Okay. But what we want to see is that Abib is really in reference to things springing up, or Abib is in reference to spring, not harvest. Is that clear so far? Yep, the moon helps to maintain it. Absolutely. All right. Okay, so Abib is in reference to things springing up. All right, or in reference to spring. All right. So now, what we have covered so far, family, is the fact that the feast of Yahuah, we see with Passover, but every feast of Yahuah carry the same requirement that we cannot, the feasts are not to be kept in foreign lands, cannot be kept outside the land. So when we assemble, when we do things, if we say we are actually keeping the feast and begin to pat ourselves on the shoulder, you know what we have done? We read it last week. If we declare that what we have done and what we are doing is keeping the feast, and Yahuwah is so pleased with me because I'm keeping the feast, then what we have done is we have made up our own instructions and what is acceptable, are an acceptable way of keeping or doing the feast of Yahuwah, because we certainly aren't doing them according to the instructions of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah tells us, do not add, do not take away. He said, those who add, I will add to them the plague of the book. Those who take away, I will remove their name from the book. Okay, and if your name is removed from the book, certainly the plague is going to be upon you too. So not only is your name removed, but the plague is added one way or another. Whether you add or you subtract, you inherit the plague. Okay, the plagues of the book. So the plagues that was poured out upon Pharaoh will come upon us. The plagues that were poured out upon Pharaoh and the unbelieving people in Mitzrayim, and the plague that will be poured out upon the people, our oppressors in this Mitzrayim, we will also inherit the plague, because we become one with the heathen, because we have added, or we have subtracted from the word of Yahuwah. The plagues of the book is nothing new. The same plagues that Pharaoh and the rest of Mitzrayim inherited is the same plagues that this Mitzrayim, the one that proudly boasts of the pyramid on their dollar bill, they will inherit the same plague. Their babies will be slaughtered. They will see all kinds of diseases in their water. They will see all kinds of lice and everything. The water turning to blood, all of that. They will experience it in this Mitzrayim, just as the other Pharaoh that ruled over our ancestors experienced. Now, so we go to what we want to go to next. So we saw that you can't do what you want to do just because you feel you have the power to do it, and then you're doing your own thing, right? Also, we see that Abib is all about spring and not a ripening, not a barley ripening, right? Okay. Next thing we want to do, before I go to the article that I'd written on this, I want to go to the book of Bereshit. Go to the book of Bereshit, chapter 1, and just read a few verses from chapter 1. Bereshit, chapter 1. I want to begin somewhere around verse 13 or 14 or so. All right. Verse 13 says, or verse 12 says, and the earth brought forth grass, the plant that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind, and Elohim saw that it was good. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the third day. And Elohim said, let lights come to be, let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens, to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times. Let them, okay, for 1 second, let's highlight some things. Let lights, please pay attention to that, family. If you're using a book, if you could circle that in your books, let lights. We want to underline that, pay attention to that, highlight that, circle it, asterisk it, something it, but we want it to be pronounced. Let lights. Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens. And then, what is the purpose of the lights? What will be the purpose of the lights? Period. Lights. Not light, but lights. Plural. The purpose of the lights, plural, will be to separate the day from the night, to separate the day from the night. So these lights will separate day from night, and let them be for signs and for appointed times, muadim, remember, feast and appointed days. Let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and years. Wow. Those lights in the heavens, man, they have some heavy tasks, don't they? They govern everything, those lights, right? Those lights. So we see that it's important and necessary, um, uh, because, and I'm emphasizing lights, the plurality of lights. I'm emphasizing it because we have a family which includes the stars also. The stars are for signs, you see, locations, all these things. Uh, to the Akut, I want to go ahead and uh, stop here and restart